Peace and abundance, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about a very important topic that a lot of people get wrong. We're talking about discipline. Okay? If you're new to the channel, this channel is all about self-development, personal development, reality creation, law of attraction, all things in between. If you're not new, if you're a subscriber, thank you. But make sure you hit the notification bell so you're alerted every time I post a new video. All right. Let's talk about discipline, man, and the perspectives that a lot of people get wrong when it comes to discipline. Now, always remember, guys, perspective is everything. Like your perspective, your outlook, your view on something determines how it influences your life, right? Your perspective influences reality, right? One of my favorite quotes by Inky Johnson is perspective drives performance. How you view what you do will always affect how you do what you do. Okay? So always remember, y'all, like the way you look at something, situation, circumstance, different events in your life is like super, super important. Okay? Now, a lot of people look at discipline as like a punishment, right? Something that they have to do. But I'm here to tell you, like, discipline is not a punishment, it's an opportunity. And when you have this perspective shift, when you have this mental shift, you start to embrace it a lot more. Okay? And when I say discipline is an opportunity, this is what I mean. Okay? Let's take a situation, for example, somebody wakes up into the morning. They know that they're supposed to go to the gym and they don't want to go to the gym for whatever reason. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're in pain, whatever reason it is. Or maybe they just want to get back in bed and feel the warm, silky blankets, right? Now, in that moment that dilemma occurs, that person now has an opportunity. And the opportunity in that moment is for that person to live in alignment and be congruent with their ideal self, with the best version of themselves. That is an opportunity in that moment, because if that person decides to get up, get dressed, and go to the gym, now they have just taken advantage of the opportunity to reinforce their desired identity. Okay, and we all know that identity is the foundation because we attract who we are. Okay, so discipline is an opportunity, y'all. Okay, most people waste it, right? But breaking discipline is breaking trust with yourself, okay? Similar to not keeping your word, okay? But it all starts with shifting that perspective, okay? Now, discipline also builds self-trust, okay? Because when you're disciplined and you do something that you don't necessarily want to do, but know it may be beneficial to you, you gain trust with yourself internally and on a subconscious level. Okay, which helps build confidence. Okay. Now, another key part when it comes to discipline is language. Right? Being aware of the language and the words that we use. Because we have been trained and conditioned to say, I have to do this. Okay? I have to do this. I have to do that. But when you can shift those words and instead say, I get to do this. I get to do that. Even if it may be something that you don't necessarily want to do, but just the framing and the changing of the language and the words changes the frequency of the statement. So instead of, I have to go to the gym, you could say, I get to go to the gym. I get to improve my health. I get to get in better shape. I get to feel more lively and energetic. Right? It's all about perspective. Okay? two people can be in the same situation and have two different perspectives, and because they have two different perspectives, they get two different outcomes. Okay? Now, a lot of men see discipline as a restriction. Strong men see discipline as access. Discipline is how you earn your way. Discipline is your payment, right? When you're disciplined, you open certain doors, right? To higher levels of success, higher levels of achievement, higher levels of self-actualization. Okay? So we have to reframe our mindsets and our perspectives around discipline, because it's something that's so crucial and important in the journey of fulfillment or achievement, that it's something that you really have to make sure you have the right mental model. You have to have the right mental model associated with discipline, because if you don't, then you won't be disciplined. And that will continue to negatively impact your life. Okay? Now, Jocko Willink, one of my favorite speakers, authors, and just guys in the space, wrote a great book called Discipline Equals Freedom. Discipline equals freedom, right? Because discipline isn't what takes from you, it's what gives you everything. Okay? So if you don't have the discipline to eat healthy, you become a slave to bad health. Right? If you don't have the discipline to exercise, you become a slave to, not having the physical body that you want, right? You become a slave to fat, whatever. Just keep it simple, right? If you don't have the discipline to manage your money effectively, you become a slave to poverty. If you don't have the discipline to educate yourself, then you become a slave to the educational system. And that's something that you can't depend on, right? So whatever you don't have discipline in your life, you ultimately put yourself in a position to become a slave to something else. Because having that discipline will ultimately give you the freedom, right? Because that's ultimately what we're all striving for, is freedom, okay? But discipline is a requirement of that, right? So most people think discipline is something that you have to suffer through. But what if discipline is actually one of the greatest opportunities you have? Okay? That's what we're talking about here today. Discipline is one of the greatest opportunities that we have to reinforce the ideal identity, to reinforce that best version of ourselves, which ultimately aligns us with whatever it is that we want. Okay? So I want y'all to start looking at discipline as an opportunity. Start looking at discipline as a best friend. Start looking at discipline as a non-negotiable. Okay? Because if you don't, you're going to become a slave to something else. So choose the areas in your life that you know that you need to start having some discipline with, or else you put yourself at risk. Okay? Because remember, in life, whatever you say yes to, you're always saying no to something else. Whatever you say no to, you're always saying yes to something else. So say yes to discipline, because saying yes to discipline get you everything you ever wanted. Much love, everyone. Peace, love, abundance. MJ the Mastermind checking out. Until the next one.